Cup is on track here at Magny-Cours with plenty of drama and most likely a last lap battle now expected. There's been plenty of changes since qualifying ended on Saturday, so some of the key contenders now disqualified, forced to start their way down the order and now have a big challenge at hand. All of that and more is coming up, so make sure you strap yourself in for a wild ride as the European Talent Cup field prepare to do battle in France once more. It's a 4.4-kilometer layout here at Magny-Cours. 8 left turns and, well, 9 rights. Plenty of overtaking opportunities, and as we've seen in the European Talent Cup, plenty of dive bombs will be expected this year. So, as we look back now at Jerez, and well, it was straight away lights out. It was Carlos Cano who was battling his way from the start, but Hosa having a big moment on the 69, but continuing to fight their way. It was elbows out all the way throughout the race one here in Jerez, and all the way to the line. They were charging their way through the field, and well, there was a few riders crashing out, including Boxberger in the opening stages of the race. But there was this moment as well. Carlos Cano was shoved off at the final corner, fell down the order, and it allowed the 46 to take victory. Off the line though, once more. This was race 2 at Jerez, and big moves further down the order. Evan Belfort as well crashing out with a multi-rider crash in the opening stages. But taken out there, Alvaro Lucas taken out there from the 46. And there will be a long lap penalty handed this time around. In the end though, it was an incredible race, as the European Talent Cup prepares to make the start. It is cloudy conditions, no rain just yet here at Magny-Cours. Now, the last chance race did take place earlier on this morning. It did end up being a red flag. That was because of the rain coming in. It was expected at some point here today. So some of the riders, they do have experience on slightly damp conditions. Certainly, they have experience on the cooler and windier conditions that we're seeing here today.
They do, especially the top two that came through the last chance race this morning. If it does start to rain, we will have an advantage because they are aware of the track in that state. At the moment, it is dry. It does look like it could rain, but we are in a part of France where it does tend to sort of pop up out of nowhere, the rain. Yeah. So there's no guarantee of anything with the weather here.
Yeah, exactly. And well, let's get into one of the biggest stories here in the European Talent Cup. And it arrived around 7:30 yesterday. All the track action was wrapped up for the day. But in the end, it was Carlos Cano actually being disqualified from qualifying. Now, the number 1 of Cano, of course, the reigning champion in the European Talent Cup, he'll now have to start back down in P26 in this one. So a lot of work to do for the number 1.
Absolutely. Cano was disqualified for a technical infringement with his bike, so he will start, as you said, from the 9th row in 26th place. A huge amount of work to do, but he will be able to utilize the slipstream in a lot of places at this track. The run to turn 5, we will see him making plenty of moves as he fights his way up the order.
Yes, certainly. And of course, Savino as well received disqualification after qualifying. Those were the 2 riders that were disqualified, as Remy San Juan also has a slow sector. But as we look back to yesterday, it was nicer conditions for qualifying, which of course seen Gavarini eventually take pole position.
First pole here, it's a very good feeling, really good feeling, because we did only a test, and I knew I had potential to do the pole, and I'm really happy because we worked really good, me and my team this weekend, and finally the results are coming. So I'm happy, and I'm ready for the tomorrow races. It's a really good opportunity to do good and make some point, and I'll try my best. It was a strategy and a bit of luck, because it's necessary sometimes. So it was all together, like riding good and a bit of luck.
so that was your pole sitter. That was Gabarini, and he'll be going alongside Ramadipa and Bahosa. Now, of course, the 69 does have a penalty coming into this one as well, and that was from the accident you've seen there at Jerez. So he will be given a double long lap penalty. So going from P3 on the grid, it's going to be a tricky race, you would have to say, for him. He's going to have a lot to manage, and certainly get that out of the way as soon as possible once you're allowed to as lights go out.
He will lose 2.5-3 seconds per long lap, so potentially between 5 and 6 seconds. Like Kano, he will have to fight his way back. He will be able to utilize the slipstream in a lot of places, but it is obviously a massive disadvantage for Bahosa to automatically, effectively lose 6 seconds compared to his rivals.
Yes, certainly. Well, you can see the grid at the moment, and you can see a slight haze on the grid, and we did have some rain earlier on. All eyes have been to the sky throughout the morning, and certainly some tracks being done on the grid. You can see some rain as well on the camera lens. So I think some of these European Talent Cup riders, of course, it is our let's just say our junior class here at JuniorGP. It's a class that most riders come into the paddock from the likes of the British Talent Cup, the Northern Talent Cup, and make the first stepping stone into this paddock and start to learn these Grand Prix circuits. But you can see rain on the grid. So that is confirmation that there is some rain, and we could be seeing a slight delay before we get things going, but we'll just have to wait and see.
We could, yeah, and we mentioned it earlier, the two riders that came through the last chance race, you can see a lot of rain on the camera lens there. Matthias Tamburini and Kerr Martinez were the top two in this morning's last chance race where it was raining. They know this track from that race this morning in tricky conditions, so perhaps they're at a slight advantage if it does stay like this.
Yeah, well, it's similar to what they had this morning. Of course, the race was red flagged in the end just because the rain got a little bit too heavy for the race director's liking, with them, of course, using slick tyres in all classes here at JuniorGP. But there is some changes being done, and plenty of tyres out on the grid as the field makes their way back to the pit lane at the moment. And, well, the hoods are definitely up for some of the fans in the grandstand. Plenty of people have come out to watch JuniorGP this weekend. It's been a real special occasion for many of the locals here at Magny-Cours. They've been able to watch world-class racing at its finest here today, but plenty of important discussions now being done on the grid.
Absolutely. Riders will be trying to assess the conditions, trying to work out the best changes they need to make to their bike. Obviously, tyre choice will come into it, but at this point, there's a lot of unknowns as well. You don't know how the weather will change until the race starts, for example.
Yeah, there's plenty of unknowns and plenty of umbrellas now out. This rain was expected at some point here today. We looked yesterday and it did show around, as we actually see, a new race distance. So the race will be reduced to just 9 laps as the field make their way back into the pit lane. It just gives them time to make the correct decision, have more tools at hand, less panic, and less chaos really on the grid, and everything can be done in a nice, safe, calm manner before we can get going. With just 9 laps, it is going to be a reduced race distance, but it does mean if it does rain and they have to use the wet tyres, and then suddenly it starts drying out, it gives those wet tyres less time to overheat and basically turn into jelly.
Exactly, yeah. There's a lot of considerations that will go into that, but obviously safety is paramount. As you mentioned, a shorter race distance, if it does dry up, does give the wet tyres less chance to turn to jelly, yeah, as you so put it. And as you said, they'll make changes to their bikes at this point. They'll know from previous experience what they like in the wet. So here's a chance for them just to take stock, calm, and make the changes that they need.
Yeah, well, you can see some of the wind there on the flag, and the wind certainly has picked up. And on these European Talent Cup bikes, this is going to be the class where you're going to feel the wind the most, unlike the Moto 2, which we've had earlier on today. And so you can get confirmation once again from race direction that it is going to be a 9-lap race once we get going here in the European Talent Cup. But with that wind picking up, it is going to be the class that's going to be impacted by that the most.
Absolutely. It will impact, if you have a headwind or a tailwind, that impacts the slipstream effect down into Turn 5 and Turn 15 in particular. Obviously, if the wind is blowing from the side, you have to be very careful not to be caught out by that. As you say, it will have an impact on everyone on this grid.
Yeah, and it could mean places like Turn 5, if they get headwind going into Turn 5, slipstream is going to be make or break, really, for these guys to make up positions. And, well, if it is a headwind, that does mean other parts of the circuit going, like, for example, the final sector, then suddenly they're going to have a tailwind. So they're going to have so much to think about during these 9 laps. It's not going to be a simple 9-lap shootout.
No, absolutely not. I mean, ETC is very rarely a simple race in any case, but you throw into the mix a bit of rain and the wind picking up, and I say a lot to think about for the riders on this grid. And
well, like Carlos Cano, he's had to fight through qualifying only to get disqualified for a technical infringement. Now starting back down in P26, he's going to be thinking, he's going to have quite a lot of thoughts going through his head right now as he sits down in pit lane for the moment, because he has a lot of work to do, and these perhaps are not the conditions you want to be needing to push from turn 1 from the back of the field.
Perhaps not on the opening lap, as you'll want to settle in, understand the track conditions, understand the grip that's available. But on the flip side, it's a complete reset for everyone. And all the other riders will be thinking exactly the same as that. So maybe in his head, there'll be an opportunity, he'll be thinking there's an opportunity to make gains on the opening lap while others settle into the race.
Yeah, well, now you can see plenty of discussions going on down at the junior talent team. Of course, Ramadipa, a great qualifying for him. He starts from P2 once we get going. And that was, of course, affected by some of the disqualifications that took place earlier on. But you can see the 69, that is another front row setter, Fernando Bajosa. Now, the long lap penalty coming in for him, a massive challenge, because the long lap, it's not going to be used much, and we've only seen it used so far once or twice today. So in these tricky conditions, it's going to be very, very slippy out there.
It'll be very slippery in the long lap loop, and also a shortened race distance. We've just got confirmation that the pit lane will open at 12:02 local time, so that's in 5 minutes. Yeah, for Bajosa, he will lose those 5-6 seconds, perhaps a bit more in these conditions, but he now has fewer laps to make up that time as well. So he's starting from the front row. In order to perhaps fight for that podium, he will need to have an incredible lap 1. It's going to be tricky for him to fight for that podium, but you never know.
Yeah, well, as you said, opens up in 5 minutes, well, the pit lane, but it'll be open up for 10 minutes. And now, the reason why is it means in these conditions, the teams and the riders, they get a chance to do 1 or 2 sighting laps. They can go through the pit lane and complete another sighting lap before they head to the grid, which, when we get racing, could be absolutely crucial to understanding where the grip is, where the grip isn't, and where the wind's coming from.
You absolutely want to understand the track conditions and the weather conditions as much as possible before you get racing. 2 or 3 sighting laps, if you can get them in that 10-minute window, is not optimal, obviously, because optimal would be completely dry. But you want to understand how the track feels, how your bike feels, how the tyres feel before you go racing.
Yeah, and plenty of discussion as well being done between the officials, potentially just double-checking things on the grid, because it has changed quite significantly, as we mentioned, from yesterday. And it is going to be a wet race start, as we thought, of course. And I don't think, if you're on these Talent Cup machines, you'd be wanting to take too much of a risk. I think, of course, everyone's going to be on the wet tyres, and it could just be a case, if the rain does stop, to try and find the wetter parts of the circuit, especially down the straights, just to try and cool the tyres ever so slightly.
Yeah, absolutely. You'll want to cool the tyres, as you said, and the run to turn 5, the run to turn 15 are, and obviously the pit straight or the start-finish straight, they'll be the optimum places where you'll be able to cool the tyres the most. But obviously, if you're in a battle, then it becomes even trickier, because you might have to go offline to defend. You give up the optimal racing line, but then you have cooler tyres, so maybe that helps. So, as we mentioned, there'll be a lot to think about for these riders.
Yeah, plenty to think about, plenty coming up, and it is going to be 9 laps of racing. Some riders there, Ethan Sparks, just sitting in pit lane, having a little stand-up as the fans enjoy a quick bite to eat before the action begins. I don't blame them, because it is just about to hit midday here in France. And, well, it has been a good crowd all the way from the start of the weekend, all the way from the first day of practice. Plenty of fans coming around and supporting the event as well, which is always so good to see as well. Now, final preparations are being done. And a touch of the pit lane there for Ethan Sparks, so just checking that everything is what he thinks it is, i.e. damp. certainly on track, as now not too far away, the junior talent team riders getting a quick discussion with the team members before pit lane will be opened in just under 2 minutes.
Yeah, everyone in their teams will be discussing strategy, changes they're making, all the usual stuff. It's a good chance just to work even more closely as a team to try and get the best results possible.
Yeah, and well, all of them will have a different approach to this one. I'm sure there will be some teams that will be saying, just bring it home, get the experience of racing in these sort of conditions with this pack, because it could be another point in the season, or even later on, of course, for the European Talent Cup, also getting 2 races here at Magny-Cours, where this is going to come in handy. So just getting to the checker flag is going to be absolutely key.
Experience will matter, especially if you have these conditions later on, or as you say, later on in the season. Some riders will take that approach, I'm sure. Others, especially if you're in the championship fight, will be looking to take advantage of these conditions. And riders like Carlos Cano will hope he can fight his way through the field. He's now got only 9 laps to go from his grid slot to fight for top 10, top 5, potentially a podium.
Yeah, exactly. And now discussions continue, as they will until the pit lane opens. And I'm sure there'll be plenty of riders that will be waiting at the end of that pit lane when pit lane goes green, just to get out as soon as possible. But, well, as we said, Cano, that disqualification, a big unexpected factor heading into today. Something we definitely didn't expect, but the number one, he has been super quick this season, and he has shown that he's able to fight through the field and get his teeth stuck into some battles throughout this year. But, well, the reigning champion, and well, you can see actually some of the ribbons that are on some of the fairings, so even the European Talent Cup riders showing their support, their solidarity to the Borja Gomez, who sadly we lost earlier on this weekend. But of course, throughout today, our thoughts remain with his friends and family and his team. We did a minute of silence earlier on, which majority of the grid did turn out to, as the pit lane now does go green, and we can head out onto circuit. As we said, multiple warm-up laps, or multiple cycling laps, I should say, are expected before we get started with the warm-up lap. Plenty of noise down in pit lane as well. These European Talent Cup machines, although they're small, they are certainly loud, and they produce some excellent racing.
They absolutely do. It's always closely contested in this class. I say riders heading out of pit lane straight away, as you'd expect. They want to try and understand these conditions as much as they can. They'll get 2 or 3 sighting laps before they head to the grid, and that's when they'll have the maximum knowledge of condition, or of the track in these conditions. But also, these conditions never stay the same. If it continues raining, the track will always feel different. If it dries up, it will start feeling different. So they'll understand the track at this point, but it will continually change.
Yeah, exactly. And I think before we head out on our warm-up lap later on, I think the key thing is just looking out for the tyres. I'm sure the safe option is just me put on a pair of wets. I think majority of the field will be on the wet tyres, certainly, if not all the field will be using wet tyres, and it is going to be, hopefully, a still really enjoyable race to watch. I'm sure it will be, because this class, with the slipstream effect, it's so difficult to be able to escape a pack, escape a battle, and we see time and time again a rider being super quick, and then we come to the straight and suddenly there's 4 or 5 riders battling for that same position.
Absolutely. I mean, the longest straight here is around 700 meters long, but the run from turns 2 and 3 all the way up to turn 5, it will be an incredible slipstream effect. You will see riders gaining a huge amount of time, especially if you're in second place and the rider in front obviously doesn't have a slipstream. You will gain a huge chunk of time on that run into turn 5, and also between turns 13 and 15, despite the kink that goes through that is between those 2 corners. A massive slipstream effect once again.
Yeah, a massive amount of slipstream is expected here, although, as you mentioned, not longest straights that we have on the calendar. Certainly when we come to other circuits like Aragon, that's where the slipstream is going to come into play. But European Talent Cup this year, it has been super close, and we've had 4 winners across 4 races. Exactly what we expect from this category. And now, as they make their way on their cycling lap, the question is, will we have a 5th winner in as many races?
Who knows? It's entirely possible. I say, this is a complete unknown for everyone bar 2 riders on this grid. they, as we mentioned earlier, the riders that came through the last chance race do have experience of a wet Magny-Cours from this morning's race. So for 95% of the riders, it is a step into the unknown. I'm sure they have had, they've ridden in the rain before, they'll understand what to do, what not to do, but it's track specific.
Yeah, it's definitely track specific, and well, this circuit does have a few tricky points in the wet conditions that they'll have to look out for, but I can see some slick tyres there on the bikes. So perhaps not everyone going for the wets. Of course, it is a wet race start still, but if it has stopped raining out there, the riders are happy. They could take a gamble and maybe try for some slick tyres, but it's going to be keeping the temperatures in those tyres in the opening laps. But another option as well could be just do the sighting lap on the slick tyres, see how they feel, and then make the final decision while you're sitting on the grid.
Absolutely, yeah, that'll be the, as we said, riders will want to understand the track. If you can have 2 or 3 sighting laps, you will then understand whether the track is dry enough for slicks or not. You will see riders take the gamble. It's an opportunity for some riders to perhaps fight at the front that you don't normally see. But for riders who are at the front normally, it's a very tricky decision to make.
And well, now we see our pole sitter, Matteo Gabarini, P18 in the championship, just 10 points to his name, but has taken to this Magny-Cours circuit straight away. Pole position, an unexpected pole, I think it's safe to say, but he has been showing some great pace throughout the weekend, and now starting from P1, starting from pole position, it's a new opportunity for him to shine.
A first pole of the season, yeah. At Estoril he was 9th, at Jerez 30th. He's been in the points in races. He'll hope to repeat that, obviously, today.
And Ramadipa now, of course, podium to his name. And well, he'll be hoping for more podium finishes this year. Starting from P2 on the grid, another solid result in qualifying.
Yeah, his best of the season as well. Was on the podium in race 1 at Estoril. A great chance for him to repeat that.
Yeah, a solid qualifying. And then, of course, joining them on the front row of the grid is going to be Fernando Bajosa, as we have the 5-minute board shown at the end of pit lane. Still plenty of riders circulating around the circuit. Meanwhile, though, it looks like majority of our front row certainly has appeared. Certainly the majority of the front 2 rows have appeared. And now they start their discussions and make their final decisions down on the pit lane. Because, of course, it's not as simple as just changing tyres. It's having to soften your suspension and make quite a few changes, as you're seeing here. And even knee sliders can change in wet conditions. So perhaps Bajosa just getting the normal pair of knee sliders there put on. So maybe expect him to have to push like in dry conditions from lap 1. We're going to have to wait and see what tyres he's on. But, of course, Bajosa will be hoping for another victory this year.
He will, but it will be tricky for him with his double long lap and just the 9-lap race. He will lose, as we said, 5, 6, maybe more in these tricky conditions, seconds, while he does those 2 long laps. It is perhaps an opportunity if the field is close, because no one is pushing it 100% in these conditions, that he, although he'll lose the time, maybe he will come out in the group, but winning with a double long lap in a shorter race will be tricky for him.
Alvaro Lucas as well. It's going to be, hopefully, for him, win number 2. Now, Lucas, it's been a up and down season, not from necessarily his own fault. We did see, for example, over at Jerez, taken out at the final corner for him, but he has proved himself to be a race winner this year, and it's what we see in the European Talent Cup yet again, is that there's 5, 6, 7 riders able to compete for race victories weekend in, weekend out.
Absolutely, yeah. It's always a tight championship, but you always get the 5, 6, 7 riders that will fight and create that lead group.
Yeah, well, as we said about surprises, starting in P5, Borelli is going to be starting there. So the Italian, P22 in the championship currently for him. And now starting from the 2nd row, a cracking qualifying result, and he's going to be hoping to turn that into a top 5 finish.
He will, yeah. It's his best result in qualifying this season, and as you say, he'll be hoping for a 2nd top 10 of 2025.
And the TV as well, a home round for him, of course, French rider, French round. And it's what we see going to the new circuits. Of course, last time we were in France was 2019, but that was at Le Mans. Now they're here at Magny-Cours. And with it being a new track, it's something we see time and time again. Some riders just adapt to it straight away.
Yeah, exactly. And also, as a French rider, he's probably ridden here hundreds of times already. It's one of the more famous French circuits, along with Le Mans, obviously. So he'll know the circuit like the back of his hand.
And well, starting row 3 of the grid, it is going to be Rostangé. Now, of course, another French rider. Tinted visor currently for him on the grid. Some riders still enjoy to use the tinted visor in these conditions. Some riders absolutely despise using a tinted visor. Sometimes, well, we do see yellow visors coming into use. It makes it a little bit easier, but that's usually when conditions are slightly worse than this, when the rain is slightly heavier than this. But really interesting to see there the different options in visibility in their visors.
It will come down to rider preference, as you said. Some riders will go for the clear visor, some for the tinted. It will all just be how they feel, basically based on the sighting laps.
Yeah, and well, based on the sighting laps, it is going to be their final choice in tyres. Of course, this was declared a wet race start now, and it is going to be a 9-lap shootout for the European Talent Cup. And well, it's going to be one to look out for. It's going to be one to watch. It has been a slight delay, and it's these types of delays where having experience really helps you out, because having experience in these delays keeps you focused, and you know exactly what you need to do and where your mind needs to be.
Yeah, for a lot of riders, perhaps it's the first time they've had a delay at the start of a race because of weather, so they'll be maybe questioning what's happening. For others, they might have experienced it before, so they'll be staying calm, staying cool and collected, understanding exactly the process that they need to go through to stay in the zone.
Yeah, well, for JuniorGP, for the JuniorGP paddock and for the European Talent Cup class, it's obviously not the first time we've had to deal with tricky conditions, because it seems like the whole weekend, opening weekend in Estoril, was tricky conditions all the way throughout. So I'm sure some of the riders will be trying to use that experience. Of course, Estoril, a different circuit to Magny-Cours, but the overall principle of how you approach these types of races will definitely come into play.
It will, yeah. As we mentioned, you want to stay cool, calm, collected. You want to stay in your zone. We've obviously had pit lane closed now, so the 10 minutes are up, no more sighting laps, and we have the 5-minute board displaying on the grid.
Yeah, so the 5-minute board now displayed, meaning that we shouldn't be too long from getting going. Of course, the European Talent Cup, a massive grid once more in 2025. So much so, there has to be a qualifying race at the start of the day, which was, of course, Tineth and San Juan who was able to get through with that one. As last chat,
it was Matthias Tamburini who won that race. San Juan is starting behind them due to his back of the grid penalty.
Yes. So San Juan, of course, back of the grid penalty, and it is going to be Tineth and Tamburini, the Italian, who got through on the last chance qualifying race. So plenty of penalties as well to get through. We'll get you through them just on the warm-up lap itself. We've mentioned some of the disqualifications and, of course, some of the long laps that have been given. And, of course, some substitute riders for this weekend. But race 1 not too far from getting going. And, of course, one of the substitutes this weekend being the number 80 of Pedro Matos. As the board still being shown at the front of the field, and then we'll take you for a grid, and then we head on to the warm-up lap. But Gambarini going from pole, can he turn it into victory here at Magny-Cours? We're not going to have to wait too long to find out. There still is some spots of rain on the camera lens, and you can still hear maybe some rain spots landing as well. But the real question is, how heavy is it going to be? Because you do not want to go out there on wet tyres if it is bone dry on the track itself.
You don't, because that will... Obviously, the wet tyres are not designed for those conditions. They will not give you the speed or grip you want. You need to make the right tyre choice based on the conditions. But this is a circuit where rain often comes very quickly and disappears quickly and maybe doesn't last long. We're seeing here, it looks like it's drying up, but maybe some parts of the track are still wet. There's still drops on the camera lens. It's going to be a very tough choice.
Yeah, and well, as you said, this is one of the circuits in the world where you can have rain in the first sector and it'll be bone dry in the third sector. It's almost typical to the likes of UK weather, more than typical French weather, of course. It's a new challenge for a lot of these teams, and you can see quite a lot of team members now on the grid having discussions with each other, perhaps trying to find out what each other are going to be running, if they're going to be running with the wet, the dries, or most importantly, they'll have the weather radar out on their phones, trying to wonder what's going to happen next, because I think with this being declared a wet race start, that's going to be one of the most important parts if any more rain comes and you choose to go on those slick tyres.
It is, yeah. But as we discussed it earlier in Moto 2, we've discussed it earlier in ETC. It is unpredictable here. We looked at the weather radar yesterday and it said, whatever it said, rain at 2 o'clock, for example. And then you look this morning and it said, maybe there's rain all day. And then actually it's rained a little bit this morning and it's rained a little bit now. But for most of it, it's been dry. Yes, the odd shower coming through, and normally light showers as well.
Yeah, it's not exactly the heaviest showers in the world. It's not the type of showers that are going to get the track soaking, but they are the type of showers that maybe as the day goes on, it could create quite a greasy track surface for them to ride on.
It can, yeah. And also the other thing to consider is curbs. You will want to avoid curbs, especially if you're on slick tyres and they're slightly damp, and white lines. For the same reason, they'll give you no grip.
Yeah, and the European Talent Cup, it's all about corner speed. And, well, you have to make the corners as big as possible, as wide as possible, and use all the track surface. But some conversations now as well going on between officials and team members on the grid. Now, we shouldn't be too long before we can get going.
They can finish their laps. Even it's right. Yeah, but now it's right. Yeah, now it's right. It's up to the riders.
So some conversation now going on in the pit grid about changing tyres and some discussions if everyone will get the chance to change tyres before race start potentially here. So all the teams now in this discussion before a final decision will be made. So just trying to listen in there on the grid. It was quite hard to hear quite a lot of what they were saying. But the teams and the officials trying to come to some sort of agreement and conclusion after that talk of the grid, all about changing tyres and all about, of course, trying to keep everyone as safe as possible.
It sounded like, and we've got confirmation here, that they have said it will be a wet race, but there was a line in there that said if it's dry, it's up to the rider. So perhaps we will see some differing tyre strategies. If it is dry, I suspect not. And it does, I mean, there were some umbrellas up just now, but it doesn't look like it's raining too heavily at the moment.
Yeah, and well, tyres are the only thing that is going to give the rider feedback while they're on the track. So super important, and hopefully everyone's going to make the right decision, because what we don't want to see is maybe one or two riders get it right, or one rider gets it right and then the rest of the field struggling the rest of the way. We want to see a nice, good battle all the way throughout this field, like we've seen so far this year. So hopefully they can make the right decision, not only for the conditions, but also for the rider that's going to be receiving that feedback from the tyres themselves.
Exactly. We want them to make the right choice. We want them to have a great race. It looks like that's what we're in store for, but we obviously need to see, when it comes to tyres and the conditions, what we can expect.
Well, conditions look about the same as what they were earlier on. Certainly looks a little bit drier than what it was. Still some spots of rain on the camera lines. Whether that's from earlier on or from now is another question. But the officials definitely having a busy time at the moment. Of course, their job just to keep everyone as safe as possible and to make sure that everyone knows exactly what the start procedure is going to be.
Exactly, yeah. They need to keep everyone safe, but also explain what the process is. It is a slightly tricky one because we have a wet race, but maybe it's not wet enough for wet tyres. So there's obviously some confusion at the moment about the process.
well, the board being shown once again. So that is going to be confirmation of another 5-minute wait before we can get going, where then, of course, we'll head out on the warm-up lap. Still confirmation, though, of a wet race. So plenty to look out for here in the European Talent Cup. Not too much longer, hopefully, before we can get a race start in. It has been a delayed start, but the riders, they've kept their helmets on, they've sat on the bike, and they've kept calm as well, watching on in the pit lane. And seeing themselves on the TV screens. A nice little wave to the camera as well. But the grid, absolutely jam-packed at the moment. A lot of internal talks, I think it's safe to say, between the teams. And I think it's going to be even some debates within the teams over what's best. Because some riders, they like to have that conversation with the team and for their mechanics, their crew chief, to almost recommend them what way to go. Other riders, they like it being all in their own power in these types of situations and for the whole team just to listen to them.
Yeah, it's a tricky one because the riders are the only ones who know how, for example, turn 5 feels or turn 8 or turn 13. The team won't know that. They'll be based on the rider feedback. So in a way, the riders need to make their own decision here, but you also want to do it with the team because maybe they have more experience in this sort of delay in these conditions to make it work for them. The other thing as well, is you mentioned that riders may go different ways compared to their rivals, but also within teams. Maybe one rider in a team goes for wets and another goes for slicks because of how they felt on their warm-up laps.
Yeah, and of course, picking those wet tyres, it's going to give you the confidence on the opening couple of laps, especially for touching white lines, touching curbs. It's going to give you that confidence as the 3-minute board is now up and everyone starts to get themselves prepared for lights out. So just 3 minutes to go before we can get started, and well, tension certainly high on the grid.
Absolutely, yeah. It's going to be a tense 3 minutes for these riders, just waiting to see what the conditions are going to do. If rain isn't falling, the track will continually dry. It's not as warm as it has been the last couple of days here at Magny-Cours. It's still fairly warm, so the track will dry. But again, they haven't been out on a sighting lap for 10 minutes or so now. The track conditions will have changed in that time. And as we mentioned earlier, they will continually change, either drying or getting wetter.
Yeah, the track conditions and, well, the weather conditions are going to be changing as the day goes on. By the time we get to race 2, it could be a completely different story for the European Talent Cup field. But right now, they're faced with a tricky challenge ahead. The grid starts to disperse as, well, that means we are very, very close to lights out. Just a couple of team members remain on the grid to start the bike. First of all, rolling starters for the European Talent Cup machines. So they'll load them up onto the rollers and get them started. And as well, the tyre blankets remaining on just to protect the tyres from any wind and stop any heat escaping the tyre warmers themselves. But the final checks will be done in just a few moments' time. Bikes will be started and we will head out on our warm-up lap.
Yeah, and the warm-up lap will be as important as any racing lap because it will be the last chance to get a feel for the track, for how wet it is, for the tyres before you go racing.
Yeah, a very, very important warm-up lap, as you said. Gabarini, a super important warm-up lap for him to get his eye into turn 1 specifically because he's going to be the first rider to see the conditions. He's going to be the first rider to face the corners as he goes from pole position here in the European Talent Cup Race 1. So, as the riders prepare themselves for 9 laps of drama here at Magny-Cours, it is going to be Matteo Gabarini going from pole position alongside Ramadipa and Bahosa. Alvaro Lucas, Borelli and Nativi go from row 2. Rustangi, Longarella and Gutierrez go from the 3rd row of our European Talent Cup grid. Enriquez starts alongside Perez and Boxberger in row 4, as row 5 will be taken up by Borg, Rodriguez and Galan. Row 6 will have Mariolanda, Krakovil and Karapushin, as Ethan Sparks, Sanchez and Darkengan go from V21, with Almeida, Osorio and Beluzio going from row 8. Now, of course, row 9, it's going to have Cano on it as the final row of our grid, of course, having Tamburini, Tinef and San Juan. So a super, super important field, an important race coming up here. Cano going from further down the order, still spots of rain in the air and quite a few slick tyres on the grid. So the warm-up lap starts now and 9 laps of racing is coming up.
It's, as we said, a very, very important warm-up lap. If riders are on slicks, and it looks like a lot of them are, they'll have to understand how the track is right now, but it will change. For Cano, he needs to understand where he thinks he can gain places on the opening couple of laps if he wants to fight for that podium.
Yeah, and Ramadipa at the moment pushing on this warm-up lap. So perhaps just trying to get adequate temperature into his tyres, but you don't want to be necessarily arriving to the grid first, because then you're having time to allow your slick tyres to cool down quite a lot.
It's a balancing act. You want to get the tyres in the window in terms of temperature, and to do that you need to push. But you also don't want to be on the grid for too long, because as you said, the tyres will then cool down and they won't offer you the grip that you're expecting.
Yeah, and now we look at our championship standings. Of course, it is Longarella leading by 22 points over Carlos Cano. But of course, Cano, he's had a difficult start to 2025. Quite a lot of unlucky scenarios. Even at Jerez, of course, final corner, he had to go into the gravel as well to take some avoiding action in that one. So he lost out quite a few points there. Of course, reigning champion in the European Talent Cup. It's a real target on his back, and it's a person that everyone wants to beat, just to say they've bet the #1 here.
As soon as you put that #1 plate on, everyone wants to beat you. As you say, a bit of just seeing the #7 running wide, maybe just slowing down
back,
a little bit, just to not be on the grid for as long. Yeah, everyone will want to beat the reigning champion. That's across the board. They've got a good chance today with him starting from the 9th row, but it will be an important race for Cano as well. He is within a race distance of Longarella in terms of the championship. It might change after this race, but if he can stay within that window, it will be a good outcome from this one.
Yeah, it'll be an excellent outcome if he can stay within 25 points. Gabarini going from pole position. A lot of pressure will be on him, of course, starting from pole for the first time. And he just tries to get himself ready, gets ready to race here at Magny-Cours. The red flag is at the front of the grid. Once all checks have been complete, once everyone's in the right positions, the green flag will wave at the back, and then the start marshal will be removed from the front, and then of course we can get going. So keep your eyes on the left-hand side. Of course, Ramadipa and Bahosa alongside as well. Alvaro Lucas hoping for a good result in the 46 as we go racing in race 1 of the European Talent Cup. It's lights out as we head to turn 1. It's quite a long drag on these ETC machines as almost free wide going into turn 1. Now 69 Bahosa up into P2 there for him, but at the front it still continues to be the Italian, the 81 Gabarini leading the field. Alvaro Lucas up into P4 at the moment, sitting there. He'll go into the slipstream. Ramadipa in P2 now as your race leader, or what was your race leader, your pole sitter, Gabarini, ran wide and had a massive moment there, so perhaps just getting caught out offline.
Perhaps getting caught out by the conditions, just running wide. A bit of smoke coming there, perhaps just under braking the tyre, locking slightly, or a bit of rubbing. Oh, a big crash at turn 5. Yeah,
so a big crash at turn 5. Quite a few riders down there, and quite a few riders there just trying to pick up the machines as quick as possible before we will carry on at the front. But some disappointment there, definitely, as they tried to get the bikes restarted. But at the front, Ramadipa hits the front now, overtakes the 69 of Bahosa, and well, the race is certainly on. And now trying to get into the slipstream, Gabarini had indeed dropped back, but perhaps now going to be dropping back for even further down the order, back down to P5, because, well, Lucas on his tail as things stand, as 69 looks up the inside once more. A dive bomb there over at turn 13, and now Ramadipa is going to fight back as they head into the final sector now, as the cleanup operation at turn 5 continues.
Yeah, Bahosa looked like he got a great start as lights went out, was just unable to hold P1 through turn 1, but settled into that slipstream place. He's gained from his grid position, obviously still has the double long lap to take.
So Karpushin there showing as one of the riders that have crashed. Almeida as well. Looks like Ethan Sparks was well down as the 99 and 69 have been given their penalties to serve from now on. Of course, TNF having fought through earlier on today. He's put in all that work and now race over at lap 1 as Bahosa at the front of the field.
Bahosa's taken the lead. Ran slightly wide there, but able to keep it. Ramadipa inside in the slipstream will get a great run heading into turn 5. Question about whether yellow flags will still be out, and it looks like they are with the light flashing there. So something just flying off in the background there as well.
Yeah, that looked like a front mudguard that was bouncing its way through the gravel trap there. So no more front mudguard for one of the riders in this group. But Ramadipa now looking up the inside once more on the 32. He does in a very, very aggressive move. He takes the lead. It was hard, but it looks like Bahosa was just able to keep on to the circuit. I think the 69 perhaps just got a bit of a scare when he's seen the 32 of Ramadipa coming up his inside.
It did look like that, but able to keep the bike upright, slots back into second place, and will look to take the fight to Ramadipa on this lap.
Yeah, and certainly now, as the number 7 Borelli looks to make a move, and this is a replay of the incidents. They began just a bunch up further down the order, and it looks like, yeah, it was just a chain reaction. Unsighted riders, it was a big, big group, and then you'll just see the incident there. Number 70 on the ground, and it all just bunched up on the inside. Riders trying to initially take avoiding action of the first rider, and then as they did that, everyone piled into the inside.
Turn 5 is a pinch point, especially on lap 1. When you have a group of riders, it just takes one incident and it just bunches up.
And now, side by side, heading to turn 1. Bahosa's on the outside though, so Ramadipa holds firm in P1 as we head to turn 1. Now, of course, keep in mind, 2 long lap penalties to serve for Bahosa. That should be around 6 seconds lost, maybe even a little bit more with it being so slippy out there. You don't want to throw it down the road at long lap penalty loop.
Absolutely not, and obviously if he goes on the green while he's taking that long lap, he'll then have to do it again, so he has to be very careful. I suspect his strategy was to try and get away at the start and get as much of a gap as possible. Hasn't been able to do that. We're seeing a 5-rider group fighting for victory here, and it looks like he's just making a move into the lead ahead of Ramadipa under braking at turn 5.
Yeah, now of course we'll carry on. Ramadipa fighting back straight away as, well, they make their way towards turn 6 now, and then we're heading towards where the long lap penalty actually is located. So 69, will he take the first of his long laps this time around? It looks like he will, so diving into the long lap penalty now, should lose around 2 or 3 seconds. Where will this drop him back to? He entered P3 inside the podium places, and now he slots in. Is that Carlos Cano that he slots in behind? So perhaps P13 at the moment now for the 69. We'll wait for that 2 update, but Carlos Cano nonetheless inside the point scoring positions, and that is going to be job done for 1 of Bahosa's long lap penalties.
It is, and we'll check how much time he lost taking it. As you said, Cano up to 13th at the moment, and it looked like Bahosa was around Cano when he rejoined, so 12th, 13th place perhaps for the Spaniard.
As now Alvaro Lucas looking up the inside. The 69 looks up the inside, but the CF Moto Aspar rider thinking better of it, slotting back into P3 for the time being. Now, of course, Ramadipa, super impressive in qualifying, now leading the race. Longarella sets the fastest lap, but that was soon beaten by 2-3 riders as Carlos Cano now holds the fastest lap. So Cano pushing on. Perhaps this is going to be his charge to get inside the top 10 as Gabarini hits the front once more. So the 81 showing true pace and showing that he belongs in P1.
Yeah, obviously ran wide on the first lap from pole position, but hasn't let it affect him. He's just quietly gone about his business. Now back in the front. We see Cano and Bahosa going side by side on the run into turn 5. And Bahosa looks like he's ahead. Is he going to go up the inside of the number 20 as well? He is.
A solid move there. Of course, Cano, he's had work to do, and he was, as we see actually, a crash there for the 26. So disappointment there for him. So that will be an end as the marshals try and get that bike off to safety. Deep gravel as well for them, and clearly that bike not wanting to be moved easily as Alvaro Lucas now hits the front, and yet the second long lap penalty has been made by Bahosa. So a solid long lap yet again as just ahead now, and still a nice safe rejoin in the finish up. But the 46 at the front of this field, and at the start of this lap, it was the 81, your pole sitter, who was in P1. Now he's dropped all the way back to P5 as Alex Longarella, your championship leader, looks to be on the attack. And well, Jack, it's been a great season so far for Longarella. And you have to say, if he can walk away with another victory, that's going to be some solid championship points. Another 25 points will be what he wants to get as he looks up the inside of Alvaro Lucas.
It will be, yeah, exactly what he's looking for. As we see, they come through the final chicane, taking a couple of different lines. Some riders hitting the curbs a bit more. Alex Longarella getting some encouragement from his team on the pit wall. And we see the number 4 battle for the lead through turn 1. Just trying to see who that is. It's a number 45, so it is Longarella who takes the lead. Gambarini running wide again at turns 2 and 3. We've just had confirmation that the number 9 tank has taken, so that's Remy Samoan has completed his long lap penalty. As we head down on the run through turns 4 and into turn 5. And it's Christian Borelli who has the slipstream. Alex Longarella, it's Borelli who actually makes the move. It's very tight through turn 5. Longarella taking the lead through the run into turn 5. Christian Borelli now in P1.
Yeah, great ride so far for the number 7. And well, it's been a great race so far for him. And now he's going to be hoping to try and take the lead. He's going to be hoping to take victory, but Lucas on the attack straight away on the 46. 5 laps remaining, so moving into the closing stages of this European Talent Cup race. This is where moves begin to be important. This is where you need to set yourself up in a nice position. It's almost 3 wide heading into the Imola section of the circuit, the chicane, as Longarella now slots back into P2. Lucas back down to P3, potentially now second position once again, but Carlos Cano, he's lurking. P4, the number 1 is on the attack, and he wants another 25 points to his name so far this season. He wants redemption after a tricky weekend over at Jerez. Of course, he started on pole position, but it wasn't smooth sailing for him. But championship leader Longarella is clearly not scared to get his elbows out.
He's not. Longarella just taking, well, I think he was forced wide there. Carlos Cano, as Lewis mentioned, up to 4th place. An incredible comeback. He's actually into 3rd now. He's ahead of his championship rival. So, Cano from the 9th row, fighting for the podium positions out in front. Borelli is leading Alvaro Lucas, but there's nothing to separate them, and turn 3 will be crucial. It's time to get the power down. Whoever gets the power down first will have a huge advantage on the long run in to the Adelaide hairpin. Carlos Cano just sitting behind the top 2 at the moment. Bahusa has set the fastest lap of the race. Under braking for Alvaro Lucas, getting very squirrely under braking for Adelaide hairpin, but able to keep it together, remaining in 2nd place as he looks to attack Christian Borelli, the race leader. Carlos Cano sitting in 3rd, just ahead of Alex Longarella, as the 2 title rivals fight for the podium positions. Cano has come from the 9th row of the grid. After the 180-degree corner, it's Borelli who still leads ahead of Alvaro Lucas, but Lucas is close. Is he going to make a move into the chicane? He thinks about it, but decides against it. There are other overtaking opportunities to come. Cano forces his way up the inside of Lucas and Borelli at turn 13. He goes from 3rd to 1st in 1 move, and he signals for the riders behind him to follow, but Borelli is on the inside through turn 14. He isn't able to make that move stick. They're 4 wide behind Cano into turn 15. All able to keep it together, positions changing as they cross the line, and now just 3 laps to go in this shortened ETC Race 1. Cano leading ahead of Alvaro Lucas and Alex Longarella across the lane. It looks like he's trying to build up a bit of a gap. He's gained 25 positions so far, has the number 1. The gap will probably come down on the run through turns 3 and 4 into turn 5.
So Cano leading the way here. So the number 1 showing his authority once more. Longarella and Lucas. Now they've been on attack from lap 1. And well, you have to wonder, is that just going to be a strategy to try and bunch everyone up once again? Because quite a few riders, they do enjoy a group battle, and they do enjoy being able to get in the mix and allow other riders to trip up each other.
They do, and we just see Alex Longarella leading the race. Now he just gets ahead, and Alvaro Lucas passes Cano as well, but Cano's fighting back into the 180-degree corner. Can he do 2 for 1 once again? He can, although it looks, yes, no, he has been able to make it stick. It is a big group fighting for P1 at the moment.
Yeah, it's classic European Talent Cup stuff. Longarella and Cano go side by side. The two of the top contenders here in 2025. It's prime time stuff here with 3 laps remaining. It's everything to play for. It's elbows out as Cano goes up the inside. The number 1 goes through. Lucas also tries to get himself into the podium positions once more. Bahosa continues his attack. Now keep in mind, 2 long lap penalties and now about to snatch the lead, although they're 3 wide once more. Ramadipa as well, trying to make up a few positions. That's going to demote the likes of Longarella further down the order. So Longarella all the way back down to P5, and already the field taking a lot of curb at the final chicane as Cano's side by side. Here's the inside line for turn 1, and well, the number 1, the reigning champion, back into P1.
He had a superb exit out of that chicane. They took slightly different lines, and that helped Cano back into the lead through turns 1, 2, and 3. But he now is giving everyone else a tow behind him.
Yeah, he's giving everyone a run for their money, that is for sure. As we head on to the penultimate lap, the 69 looks up the inside. That is Bahosa. Up the inside he goes, and straight away as well, the 45 Longarella. Everyone's going to try and take opportunity and push Cano further down the order. Obviously this race, Cano, he's had a dramatic one. Started from P26, started all the way back down the order. He's been used to fighting with people all the way throughout the race. Obviously, reigning champion, plenty of experience fighting at the front, but it's one thing to do it at the front, it's another thing to fight through the field and still have the pace, still have the tyre underneath you to fight as we near the final lap.
It absolutely is, and he seemed to do it quietly as well. He sort of just made gains every lap, but without making everyone aware that he was making those gains, and then suddenly in the lead of the race.
Yeah, definitely. It was. He's done it in a silent way, but as we say, actions speak louder than words. He's up inside the top 5 at the moment, and he sits waiting for an opportunity. Of course, we may have a back marker coming into play as well in this final lap. So a completely new challenge for this field as they come towards the final sector and make their way into what's known as the high school complex. Heavy into the braking zone once more, and Alvaro Lucas, his bike's on the move underneath him, but he does get it stopped. He gets it turned and gets it out towards the final chicane now. Tricky to make a move through the final chicane, but it's all on your exit as we enter the final lap. Longarella leads from Ramadipa with Lucas in 3rd, Cano in P4, and Bahosa in P5.
It's going to be a very tense final lap. We've got Cano looking for a remarkable victory from 26 on the grid. His title rival will obviously want to prevent that, prevent a points gain for the number 1. And Ramadipa through turn 4, that looked like taking the lead. Obviously, that will change on the run into turn 5.
Yeah, on the braking zone at turn 5, you'd think 1 or 2 moves still to be made. Ramadipa, though, has the inside line. Heavy on the brakes. It is Cano who was bravest. As now we continue our battle, we continue our run with 3 quarters of a lap left. And well, the team watches on. Cano's team watches on with, I'm sure, a little bit of enjoyment, but right now it'll be mainly nerves as Cano, a save, and then he is down. Cano, he lost the front, he tried to save it, and when saving it, it brought him back into the middle of the circuit. So the number 1 is down on the deck. And definitely some disappointment there. His team watches on in disappointment. They'll go again, of course, later on in race 2. Ramadipa leads with Lucas. It's just them 2 at the moment. There's a slight gap to the rest of the field. That's Longarella, who has crashed. Your championship leader is down. Now, we spoke about the championship gap before this one. It can change in a blink of an eye, as this race is going to go down to the wire once more. It's last lap time, it's last sector time, folks, here in the ETC. Cano and Longarella walk off as Ramadipa leads with just 2 corners remaining. Ramadipa is going to win race 1 of ETC, celebrates over the line, and it is going to be the 32 in P1. What a finish, what a result. 98 thousandths of a second. Ramadipa wins from Alvaro Lucas. Of course, number 7 of Borelli will take the final spot on the podium. Bahosa in P4, Gabarini P5 after starting from pole. But frustrations you'd have to think for both riders, really. But Cano, a small mistake, a small error, a massive, massive price to pay. And of course, for your championship leader, did absolutely nothing he could have done, that is for sure. But Cano, he really wonders what could have been a solid, solid ride. And now he's going to have all that work to do again. Ramadipa, though, does win. 3rd in the championship now. For him, 60 points to his name on the Honda Asian Dream Racing Junior team. Of course, part of the junior talent team is Ramadipa. And what a result it has been. It's been a long time coming, that is for sure. As Alvaro Lucas missing out by less than a 10th. He'll be disappointed, but he'll go back to the drawing board because he knows that a good result is on the cards. P2 is still a good result, but being that close to victory has got to hurt just a little. Borelli takes P3, Bahosa P4, and there is Borelli celebrating the Italian, absolutely loving every single bit of this cool down lap. The marshals applauding the riders, of course. And not much of a conversation, of course, between Cano and Longarella, you would think, on this final lap. So they sit at the side of the track as our riders enter Parc Fermé. That is going to be Ramadipa celebrating the win with his team and with his teammate, actually, at the moment. An unforgettable day, that is for sure. P1 for the 32. And of course, 25 points added to his championship tally. European Talent Cup, they will be back out later on this afternoon for another race. So 50 points up for grabs for the ETC this weekend. As P1 just checking his team, it definitely was, as celebrations now begin down in Parc Fermé, where of course we'll be able to hear from him once he speaks to Jack, once he has a moment to reflect on exactly what has happened. But I think overall, a very, very happy podium here at Magny-Cours. Maybe Alvaro Lucas just thinking already to race 2. Of course, a regular front runner, you would have to say, so far this year. Definitely one of the title contenders is Alvaro Lucas. And well, who knows, the likes of Ramadipa, it's going to catapult him up in the championship standings. And is this going to be the start of things to come? 60 points now to his tally, as we said, and up into 3rd in the championship. Of course, just a 9-lap race. Lucas Brown as well down there celebrating. Lucas will be out later on, and very soon actually, for the JuniorGP race, but still getting an opportunity. Of course, although they're in different classes, they spend a lot of time with each other for training and also during the race weekends. They all travel together, they all stay together at the hotel, and then have a good relationship between the whole junior talent team. As Alvaro Lucas points to his visor, Borja Gomez on his visor. A great tribute, and I'm sure he'll be dedicating this podium. But the likes of number 7 for Borelli, maybe an unexpected podium for him going into today. Of course, started from the 2nd row of the grid, battled all the way, and battled very hard as well. The race stayed bunched up throughout. As the shades come off for the celebrations, for the pictures that are now taken. But Parc Fermé, I'm sure that race will be remembered for quite a long time within the junior talent team, because it was a race that many of us will not forget, but that was because of some great battles throughout. This was Ramadipa hitting the front, but this was Cano's mistake. He saved it briefly before he went back into the middle of the circuit, and it was Longarella who received that impact. But over the line, it was celebrations. He was already celebrating meters before the line. And well, feet off the feet pegs, and the arm punching and waving in the air, as of course for the number 7 in P3. But P1 now for the 32. Tears, and I'm sure they are tears of joy, as they will have an opportunity in just a few moments' time to celebrate in pit lane. But before, let's hear from him as he speaks to Jack down in Parc Ferme.
Keandra, what a race that was. Just talk us through that.
Yeah, it's an amazing race for me. I give my best. I just do my best, and I try to be clever in every corner, and I try to make good last lap. I try to manage myself, manage my ego, and this is for Indonesia, for my team, for my family. Thank you so much for all the support. I will keep this momentum for the race too.
And just in your native language for your fans back home.
Terima kasih semuanya. Alhamdulillah saya mendapat kemenangan di race 1 ini. Saya akan coba lebih lagi di race 2 nanti. Doakan saya semua. Assalamualaikum.
Thank you very much.
And this was how the race unfolded. It was drama from turn 1. There was overtakes all the way through, and then this accident over at turn 5. It collected quite a few riders as races came to an abrupt end. Confusion, questions about that one, but the race continued at the front. Ramadipa, he was constantly in the top order, constantly in the podium places, as Bahosa took one of his long lap penalties. He had 2 to serve as Alvaro Lucas was on the attack. On the CF Moto Aspar, Rashim looking down the inside, trying to tuck into slipstream as well, but all the talk throughout was on Carlos Cano and the moves he was making, and with a few followers as well throughout the race. But Longarella had his stint at the front, with slipstream proven to be crucial yet again in the European Talent Cup. Everything once more went into the closing stages with everything to play for. The moves were being made, the moves were fierce. Hard but fair racing, of course, as expected, as Cano then hit the front. Cano fighting from back down on the grid, started around P26 and now straight away into the fight. Longarella tried to challenge Cano at this stage as he hit the front. Lucas also demoting Cano to 3rd as Cano had a hard moment trying to push on, trying to stay in the podium fight. With yet again, classic European Talent Cup stuff, nearly clipping handlebars on the straight. As Longarella looked up the inside. Ramadipa, he sat there, he was safe, he was calm, and he was waiting for the perfect opportunity to strike. The 32 was in hunt of victory this time around. And well, I'm sure he'll be looking to do the same in race 2. He took the lead though at this stage. Cano ran wide, lost the front, went back into the middle of the circuit while saving his crash. And sadly for Cano and Longarella, it ended their race. But for Ramadipa, it was victory as the podium celebrations begin here in Magny-Cours. Of course, the team member will be first on the podium to collect the trophy for the team before the riders make their way out. It will be, of course, first person out being Borelli in P3 before Alvaro Lucas. A little point to the sky for him in P2. And then Ramadipa, P1 now for him. What a result it is for the entire junior talent team. Tricky conditions, a reduced race as well, as the president of the National Speed Commission once again hands out the team podium trophy. Borelli receives his trophy now, and the rain is falling here in Magny-Cours. it could be a different story in race 2 as Alvaro Lucas. Another point to the sky for him as Ramadipa prepares for his moment in the spotlight. And that is P1. That is victory for Ramadipa. So the Indonesian national anthem rings out here in France. The rain is well and truly coming down now, but I don't think that's going to concern the ETC riders just yet. Of course, they will be back out for the race 2. Who knows? It could be a wet race. Can it be Ramadipa making it 2 from 2? We're going to have to wait and find out. What a race we had. It was another instant classic, but now as we take a look at the final result here in Magny-Cours, here in race 1 for ETC, it is of course Ramadipa taking victory, 98 thousandths of a second over Alvaro Lucas and Borelli in P3. Fernando Bajosa in P4 ahead of Gabarini and Gutierrez. Crateville finishes P7 with Galan and Mariolanda finishing in P8 and P9. As now we move on to our final spot inside top 10, it was indeed Travis Borg with Rodriguez, Sanchez and Osorio in P11, 12 and 13th. Rustang, Nativi and Perez in rounding out the top 16, while Evan Boxberger takes P17 across the line. The race went the distance, of course, as Afonso takes P18 ahead of San Juan and Tabarini in P20. Beluzio and finally P22. So 22 finishers here in the ETC. It's not too much longer before they will indeed be out. And well, it looks like we could have some wet racing coming up later this afternoon. Of course, we lost the likes of Cano in the late stages of the race through a mistake, as well as Alex Longarella. That puts the championship lead, of course, down to just 6 points as Alvaro Lucas moves into P2 now. Everything to play for. Ramadipa up into P3 as Bajosa remains P4. Carlos Cano drops to P5. And what's that going to look like for the rest of the season? Gutierrez, Carpushan, Crateville and Rodriguez as well. Mariolanda taking the final spot inside top 10 in the standings, but a real big shake up there. Borelli, P12, up 10 places in the standings. It just shows what one good result can do. It can change your season around. It can change the look and the plan of the second half of the year. As we continue to look through the field, look through the order, of course, European Talent Cup always shaking up the championship standings every single round. But it was indeed a race that will be never forgotten for Ramadipa, for the junior talent team. As finally we go down all the way to 31st in the standings. But the perfect end to race 1 as we have a look. Of course, the end of a good race. This was Ramadipa leading the pack through. You can see everyone chasing behind, tucked in, elbows tucked in, shoulders tucked in, and of course their heads tucked in behind the bubble. A little bit of chatter, some bumps through turn 1. It was no issue, it seemed, though, for Ramadipa. You can just see using all the track, using all of the curb, which after the conditions that we've seen at the start with the rain falling, you'd have to say it is brave stuff. But that's how you win in ETC, and that's how you compete in these front battles. Lucas and Longarella as well, side by side all the way down the straight, completely focused all the way to turn 1. Heavy on the brakes though once more. Well, what can the championship stands look like as we leave this weekend? Now, down to just a couple of points. Everything remains up for grabs. Carlos Cano, you'd have to say that mistake, he'll be thinking about it all the way until race 2, where he'll be hoping for redemption once more. He tried redemption in race 1, but pushed just that bit too hard. You can see the number 1 right now in the shot. He sat P3. He sat within the top couple of positions all the way throughout. It was an impressive ride from start to finish. But the number 7 as well, he fought his way through the field. He fought his way through the battle as well. Magny-Cours, a stunning track, a stunning venue, and if race 1 was anything to go by, race 2 is going to be one to watch. So make sure you tune in for that one, but we have plenty of action still to come here at Magny-Cours. With Cano looking for redemption, as we said, and the championship remaining up for grabs. Is it going to be a title defense in 2025 for the number 1 plated rider who has the target on his back from the start of the year? Well, we're just going to have to wait and find out. Battles continued all the way throughout the order. The 64 just at the back of this pack. Of course, they lost quite a few riders in the opening laps through the turn 5 incident, which caught up quite a few riders, and definitely is just one of those things at a circuit. It's a real pinch point of the track, and Bahosa just pressuring Cano there going down the straight. And classic European Talent Cup fashion, just fighting bar to bar, not giving each other an inch, no matter what. But Lucas, he sat comfortably in P3 from start to finish, and he does finish on the podium, of course. Ramadipa taking victory here in ETC Race 1. Can he make it 2 from 2 here in France as we look towards round 4 after this round? But you can see the celebrations over the line. It was delight. It was success. Well, it was a crucial 25 points. Will we be talking about this race as we end our season at round 7 later on in the year? Is this going to be a key moment of the season? One that we look back on for success and also disappointment for Cano and Longarella. Everything remains up for grabs, but it is Ramadipa who is P1 in race 1.